No, I'm not saying that the state is always doing that. Again, I'm not sitting here. I'm not some freaking. I'm not. What's that one? Fabian Liberty idiot. Like, I'm literally talking about, like, hey, do people have just because what you've said in the beginning was that people don't like. No one has a right to feel like the system is being unjust to them, basically. And you're wrong. Obviously, you obviously people can feel like not only feel, people can have well-founded arguments to support the fact that the system is working unjustly. Hell, the government has its.
Bro, what up?
Oh, there we go. What's good, bro?
What's good, my dude? I forgot we're on stream right now. What's up?
Yeah. So things do change when they're off stream. I mean, they do for me too. All right, look, bro. That panel yesterday was wild as hell, right? Like, the things that you were saying in that panel, they blow my mind. So, in previous conversations we've had, first off, I've always told you I respect you a lot. I think you're a great like debater and things like that. And I guess at one point I finally came to the realization that you weren't an ally, and you said it, like, yeah, I don't really consider myself to be
hell
an ally.
Yeah, I'm not an ally.
Right.
Fucking
100%.
True.
Yeah, it carries too much stuff with it, right?
Yeah. And I hate black people. But
okay, I don't know about all that. Now, I could see the not wanting to be an ally, but some of the antagonism is what really kills me. Now,
I'm working on being less antagonistic, okay?
No. You can work on being less antagonistic, but you're still perpetuating some of these things that Dr. Martin Luther King complained about that's perpetuating racism. Let me explain. So one of the things that you said, first off, like when we were having the reparations conversation, is you specifically said that reparations should only be for things that you were promised, right? Like for things that the government owes you.
Yeah,
that's what we should give reparations for. Okay. You're aware that we've already given reparations. Well, it seemed like when you asked about whether reparations were given to Native Americans, there was no pushback on that panel because it was all soft-boiled egg niggas. But, like, reparations have been given out to Native Americans, right? We're aware of this.
Yeah, like, I'm sure some reservations and treaties and stuff.
For hundreds of years. And it's not just in reservations. It's like literally direct aid, direct cash payments, literally free education, so on and so forth, right? So, and land. So they've done all of those things. I can give you a list of just like all the various reparations that the United States has done, like for Native Americans. They've done reparations for Mexican Americans, specifically New Mexico residents who were like exposed to some sort of nuclear nonsense, whatever, and they end up paying them out.
Yeah,
like,
what's the point?
The point is, reparations aren't necessarily based on things that people were owed. And then when you asked about the Japanese internment camps, because you remember they gave reparations for the Japanese internment camps, and your argument was, well, I mean, as long as they do it like kind of soon. They didn't do it soon. That was like 48 years later. So reparations have existed in this country, and it seems like literally everybody else is able to get reparations. But whenever it comes to black folks, all of a sudden white people start getting really scared about it. Like, I don't know, man, reparations it's too complicated. I don't like, how do we really justify? How do we determine? And I think that's
the scope and scale would make it complicated, right? Like, how the fuck would you even begin to do reparations?
It depends on what the reparations is for. If you're going to do reparations
slavery.
Well, so,
remember that thing? Exactly. Yeah.
Hell no. That's exactly the problem whenever you start discussing reparations. 90% of the time, people want to jump to something, the most nebulous form of discrimination in this country, right? And then say, of traceable discrimination. And then you want to say, well, how do we do reparations for that thing? That's not the point. Let's do reparations for things like redlining, which the people living, such as my parents, today can say that they are direct benefactors of this discrimination, right? Why don't we do reparations for things like redlining? Why don't we do reparations for things like the GI Bill? Why don't we do reparations for things like reverse redlining, right? Cool. So those are the things that we talk about. But what's crazy is white liberals like yourself are always incredibly resistant to it. The lines on whether or not we support reparations are crazy.
I'm not resistant to any of that, okay? If you want to talk about, like, we should do reparation for redlining, like, we can look at the document shit, yeah, that sounds fine. I'm okay with that. We literally have, like, civil court processes for doing this, or, like, federal processes for doing this. I think there was, like, wasn't there a big case a while ago it was either for women or for minorities against Wells Fargo? Am I making that up? Where I think Wells Fargo had to pay a fuck ton of money because they had engaged in, like, basically racially or sexually discriminatory, like, loaning practices or something. I thought this happened.
Yeah. That's the reverse redlining thing.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Then
That's like, cool. Yeah, people can do shit like that. Yeah, that's
that ain't reparations. That's not reparations, and here's why. What the government does is they go to these companies and then they get these idiots to settle for nonsense, and then these payments don't directly go to the individuals who were harmed, and then the payments that they're giving because they're class action lawsuits aren't enough to actually offset the amount of wealth that you lost from from the lost opportunity of actually getting a loan, from like your literal life savings
Wait,
that a lot of people spend in order to foreclose.
Okay, it sounds like you're just coming here to give an argument about a particular type of reparation. I don't know if we disagree.
No, that's not all. Okay, good. So then just to make sure that we're crystal clear here then. So then you do 100% agree reparations are absolutely amazing. They should be given to black people for not just things that the country owned, as you stated on the panel yesterday. It shouldn't just be for things that the country said that they would owe people. Anytime the country itself does some sort of like crazy injustice, the country should be responsible for offsetting that injustice by things, and sometimes those things can be reparations.
Sure.
Okay, good. So then, yeah, I'm glad we finally converted one of these liberal, and maybe you can convince your audience to get on board with it too, since you have all this white liberal audience. Okay, the other thing that you said, previous conversation, you said that the war on drugs wasn't particularly racist. Do you remember that conversation?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, you stand by that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, why do you believe that, or what's? Because
I think the impetus for the war on drugs was, from everything I understand, was that in black communities, drugs were destroying their neighborhoods and their communities, and they wanted tough action against it to see if they could get rid of it.
Okay, so the war on drugs was started by Nixon, right? Nixon, like that's when it was like it launched.
Okay.
John Earl Rickman, who was like the head of that department, literally said, quote, "You want to know what the war on drugs was really about? The Nixon campaign in 1968. Yeah,
I don't care. I super don't care about any of this. I know that you can, I think there's...
No, I got it. Okay, I got you. You don't care. Let me just go ahead and make sure we state this, so then you can just go ahead and be objectively wrong. Let me grab a Red Bull real quick while
you read the quote about how it's to punish the Negro or whatever the fuck. Hold on.
I'll just wait. Go ahead and get your Red Bull.
Okay, you know that abortion, doesn't Margaret Thatcher say like abortion is to get rid of black babies or whatever? Does that mean we should get rid of abortion in black communities?
Okay, let me go ahead and make sure I finish this quote, and then we'll go ahead.
Oh my God, did he actually not read the quote?
Things.
He's actually...
No, nigga, because I want you to make sure that you're understanding and contending with it.
If MLK was here right now, he'd beat the shit out of you for being a bad faith interlocutor, okay? I just want you to know that.
Okay, sure. We're going to get into locutions later on, because that's actually really pivotal to this discussion about the N-word. Anyway, he says, you want to know what this war on drugs is really about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and black with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. So while you can say, there were broader societal ideas that might have been shaped by the media or whatever, like people were communicating to them to get people to be against these drugs and things like that because of some of the damages they were having in the black community. You can say that, but the war on drugs is a legal policy, and the legal policy was created by men, and the intention of those men was to be specifically anti-black. So yes, maybe broader society isn't using it in that way, but we're not talking about like how broader society feels about it. We're talking about the design and intention of the policy.
Okay.
Good. So the war on drugs is absolutely black. So you're wrong about that.
It might have started that way, but that's not what carried it on. It wasn't carried on by anti-black sentiments. And it's strange to think that something so racist and horrible could have at points in time been supported by black people, right? So clearly the conversation is a bit more complicated than saying, well, when this particular policy started, the guys were racist. That's probably true of a whole bunch of fucking policies. 100%, sure. Okay, but like that doesn't make the policy itself racist. The reality was that crack cocaine and drug violence and gang violence were fucking obliterating black communities in the 80s and especially in the early 90s. And well-meaning, upstanding Christian family black men at that point would have literally signed on to fucking anything. Cops all over their neighborhood, whatever the fuck, federal agents, whatever, to not have their families and their neighborhoods destroyed by drugs. That's why
it's insane to me that you would talk about the war on drugs and then talk about something that was happening in the 80s and the 90s when the war on drugs was launched so much before then, right?
Bro, we've had wars on drugs. When was it the 20s where we did prohibition of alcohol? The country's always been like pro and anti-drug, right? I'm pretty sure in the early 1900s we're making laws against like cocaine and shit, right?
Yeah, but we reversed that prohibition long before then, right? And then
yeah, sure. But I'm saying that we've been in a state of like legislating for and against like drugs throughout all of the fucking history of the United States.
Right, we have. So we've waffled on a few of these things. The thing that we have not waffled on specifically is the war on drugs, since it was instituted by Nixon, and the intention of that institution was specifically racist.
Nixon wasn't the first person to start legislating drugs. Maybe to call the war on drugs, fine. And also,
Sure.
if you want to say that the war on drugs should be
policy to call the war on drugs. It's not just about whether other people had issues or things with drugs. It's about the specific policy, the specific intention. When we're talking about the war on drugs, to start roping in things like prohibition are ridiculous. That's not the conversation. We're talking about the war on drugs, which is a known policy.
The war on drugs is not a policy, okay? It's an idea to have a bunch of policies collected under it. So if you want to say that there are people that started this concept of the war on drugs who are racist, yeah, that's probably true. If you want to say that we should get rid of the war on drugs, that's definitely true. But if you want to say that all of our drug policies today, because they stem from that thing that somebody in Nixon's administration said, are all racist, that's just simplistic and not true.
But I haven't said that. What I'm saying.
Okay, so you're just saying that when the war on drugs was started, there were people in Nixon's campaign that had like racial overtures or undertures, I guess.
I'm saying no. I'm just making sure it's crystal clear. The war on drugs, the intention of that entire collective of policies was specifically racist, intended by the administration that instituted it. That's what I'm saying. And it seemed like earlier in conversation when we asked you that, you were like, no, it doesn't seem like, it just seemed like people are really just more
it can be, honestly, this conversation is so unimaginably inconsequential. Whatever will give you the biggest dopamine hit, you can say it is the case. But the answer to this conversation has no bearing on any part of any policy for anything in the entire United States. And if you consider it, you are damaging your ability to understand any part of the conversation either. Oh, okay. So if it makes you feel better, to say like, it was racist, that's fine. It's not racist today. That's not the main reason why people are anti-drug today. But if it makes you feel really good to know that there were bad, evil men in Nixon's campaign that really didn't like black people, then you know what, my dude? Then you carry that forward, okay? Beat it proudly, okay? So smack your chest, okay? And be like, yeah, they were racist. I'm here to support you. They were racist.
Here's that thing that you're doing once again where you dismiss the actual racial.
I'm not dismissing it. I'm telling you.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're literally saying to me right now that no, people, that has nothing to do with the policy today. Yes, there was racism that was behind some of the policies back then. And yes, there's some of those same racist attitudes are what are continuing to support the war on drugs.
No, that's not true. So this is why.
So you're not going to sit here and convince me. I got you. Yeah, you went longer than I did. You're not going to sit here and convince me that there are no people within our Congress and within our positions of power that still hold these racial sentiments that are okay with continuing the war on drugs as it is anti-black and disproportionately impacting black people. You're not going to convince me of that. Is that what you're trying to say?
Okay. Are you ready for this one? Are you ready? I'm going to ask you a simple question. If we got rid of all racist thought in the United States today, do you think we would immediately get rid of the war on drugs?
No, but I believe
exactly.
No,
that's
okay,
the
whole. No. You're gonna let me ask you a question.
Talk. I want
No. Don't ask me a question and then hold me down to a thing. See, I'm doing the good faith thing of actually responding to your question, and now you want to talk over me because you wanted to get me up. Gotcha.
What you got?
No, I don't think that would happen. But what I do think would happen is that the disproportionate effect of it being targeted and aimed specifically at black people would disappear. Then we would start seeing, considering the fact that whites and Hispanics use crack cocaine as often as black people, that black people would stop making up 70% of all convictions. When we look at the marijuana, marijuana,
can you not do the thing we just have to rattle off stats? It doesn't make your argument better. It's just you're just listen.
It does. It doesn't actually substantiate
the reality is
clearly. Hold on, let me finish, and then you'll. It wasn't even that long. We would actually discover that all of these policies, where we see disproportionate sentencing, arrests, and charges for black men, would start diminishing, considering that blacks and whites use these drugs at the same rate.
The reality is that black people live in the types of communities and engage in the types of lifestyles that are always going to put them in the eyes of cops more than white people. White people tend to be older, they tend to be wealthier, they tend to live in areas that aren't being as policed as heavily. So even if we got rid of all the racial discrimination in the whole country, black people are probably still going to get caught more with drugs just because of how we're sorted socioeconomically right now. Does that make sense?
Sure, I think, yes.
So if we acknowledge that, one, getting rid of all the racism...
So now you're going to ramble on, okay?
You ramble so much harder than me, okay? I'm trying to catch up, okay? I'm like 10 miles behind you, okay? All right, I'm about to sprint. Here I go, okay? Even if we get rid of all of the racist thought in the entire country, you acknowledge, wouldn't have an impact on the war on drugs, because the war on drugs is not about racism. It's about a lot of people that just don't like drugs for a wide variety of reasons. Number one. Number two, even if we did get rid of the war on drugs by some miracle, there would still be black people getting caught disproportionately, or got rid of things that aimed at racially. There'd still be black people getting caught disproportionately just because of the types of neighborhoods they're in, right? If I live in fucking West Hollywood, I'm never in my life getting caught for doing fucking drugs. Why the fuck would I? There's not cops driving through here like, raiding houses or looking for some shit. But if I live in some fucked up project or whatever where people are shooting and kill each other, where there's crazy shit going on, I'm more likely to just stumble into a cop that catches me with drugs drugs, or it comes into my house, or comes into my apartment or project, or whatever the fuck. That's just the virtue of how we're sorted right now. Like, it is what it is.
Okay, so you opened it up with something that was so asinine and ridiculous. Even if we got rid of racism, it wouldn't impact the war on drugs. What I specifically said is it would impact if you would stop playing your freaking piano in order to be disrespectful, so you don't have to actually engage with the arguments that I'm giving you and trying to interrupt me every second. You would understand what I said was that if we were to get rid of the racism, it would absolutely dramatically impact the war on drugs, because there are racial implications of the war on drugs, specifically at overcharging black men for the exact same crime. When it comes to crack cocaine usage, maybe you missed this while you were hitting your terrible piano note. Black people and white people and Hispanic people use crack cocaine at the same rates. Yet, some sort of way, black people make up 70% of the charges and sentencing for crack cocaine. Same thing with marijuana. That these things would actually start disappearing. So then we would start seeing more equitable outcomes for these actual things. Would there still probably be a slightly more arrests of black people? Yes, because obviously black people have more encounters with police. But the higher encountering with the police is predominantly because of drug-related stuff. That's the problem. So yes, it would absolutely impact it. Freak are you talking about?
What the freak are you talking about, man? I think we should get rid of all of the systemic injustices, okay? But...
Okay, I love it. Reductive, but sure. I guess we can agree on that point.
Okay. Did you think I would disagree on that? Do you think I'm here to defend... No. Am I the racism defender who's logged in to...
No, you're just the racism perpetuated with your white liberalism.
Because my white moderacy, okay? Let me tell you about something that you've probably never heard of this, okay? Have you ever heard of a little letter written from Birmingham, a jail cell that MLK was in? Let me tell you about that white moderate, okay? That's a lifestyle for me. I love it. I love it. I look at black people that are struggling, and all I think about is, listen, all I can imagine doing, I jerk off to putting a timetable on your freedom. That's what I think about. Like, you want to be happy now, but I want to wait 10 days because as a white moderate, that's just what makes me happy. Okay, we need a.
You can do the silly memes all day, but it's like, here's the deal: you do have a particularly large platform, and the thing is, most people, myself used to be one of them, really look up to you as one of the people who can actually express these ideas in succinct ways and actually combat like some of the racist ideas. But when you start perpetuating them yourself, right? Like,
hold on.
You start.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Finish. No, finish.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There are things that I would like to fix in this country, and there are ideas that I want to bring people over on, okay? I can talk about getting rid of the war on drugs through a lens that everybody can agree with. I can talk about getting rid of things related to sentencing in prisons that I can get everybody on board with, right? If you're a conservative and you think that black people's culture is fucked up, well, wouldn't the best way to fix that be to get more fathers in the household? And wouldn't the best way to do that be to get rid of every motherfucker in jail who's there on a fucking weed charge? Do you think it's more important to have a black father in jail serving some 1 or 2 or 3 year sentence for a third strike on weed? Or do you think it's better to have him in the household working each other, right? These are arguments that I can have with any person, okay? But when I have to have those arguments with people like you behind me screaming, well, Nixon said the war on drugs was fucking racist. And in front of me, I've got some conservatives who are like, I just don't want my kid buying weed in high school. You hurt me. Okay, and you make my job harder. Yeah. I don't need you to come and tell me or lecture me on what some State Department representative or some cabinet member of fucking Nixon's campaign said about drugs, when that's not the reason why today people don't like drugs. It's not about racism, maybe a little bit. Maybe people have some associations with it. But the reason why people don't like drugs today is because a lot of old people just don't like drugs. They're scary. They think that when you smoke weed, it's like PCP or bath salts, and they don't want their kids doing drugs. So those are the issues that I'll speak to. I try to do what I can to get these things gone or to get people to agree that these things should be gone, but I do it in my way. If you want to lecture people about racism and how everything is racism and how everything is racist and white supremacist and then you can do that. And if that's your goal and if that's the way that you talk to people, that's great. Do it and you do your thing. But that doesn't work when I talk to people that are already fully bought into my ideology.
Sure, and the thing is, okay. First off, you're saying that you want to talk about ways in a way to talk about things in a way that gets everyone on board with it. But the problem is, if your method of doing that is to dismiss all of the racial overtones and undertones and the racial reasonings for these things happening in the first place, then you're furthering the harm. The first step to actually fixing and redressing some of the issues that the government has done is to actually identify what the actual problem is. And when we try to dismiss these things and start saying things like, "Well, yeah, no, it's really not that. It's more of a class issue. There's a class war," and we're ignoring all of the racial reasons why these things exist, then we're not actually fixing the problem. Sure, you might want to get people on board, but if you only get people on board as much as it applies to them, then they're not ever going to do the things that would absolutely directly address the impacts, right? Reparations needs to be targeted. The whole concept of a rising tide raising all ships, it hasn't worked in this country ever. That's why the black-white wealth gap is increasing dramatically. They're saying black wealth should be decreased to zero within like 30 years or something stupid like that. So yeah, you can keep saying, I'm trying to make sure that things are appealing, but if you're doing so by literally denying the actual racism, then you're part of the problem. That's exactly what's happening here.
I don't think racism is a problem in this country in 2022. I just don't. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's keeping us from doing anything. We might disagree. I don't think it's keeping us from doing anything. Nowadays, like, fucking Republicans these days are okay with fucking gay people, generally, right? I don't think racism is the reason why we're having problems. I think we have problems for a lot of complicated intersectional reasons. I don't think it's because of racism. So when I talk about fixing these problems, I'm not going to talk about racism. I don't give a fuck, okay? If you want to talk about racism, that's your prerogative, that's fine. If you think I'm doing harm, well, then fuck me, I guess. That's on you as well. But, like, I'm going to focus on
the problems don't even directly impact you. The problems directly impact black people as it is today. And to say, like, yes, maybe, like, and it's one of those things where you're dismissing the racism of the past and then not recognizing how that racism of the past is still directly impacting everyone today, right? If you have an entire
I recognize that it can impact people today, but if people today aren't operating... But then
if you understand that, why are you always dismissing the racism? Why are you always dismissing the previous racism and not actually pointing out how these things are impacting people today, and not and then that's why you wouldn't get behind the idea of reparations and things like that, which can actually offset the previous racism. That's the problem.
Sometimes in life, people make mistakes. They make stupid decisions and they fuck parts of their life up, okay? You might, when you're 18, decide to take 1 year off school. And in that year off school, you meet a wonderful girl, you get her pregnant, and you never go back. And now you're 24 years old and you're wondering what you're supposed to do with your life. You've got a 5-year-old child, you're with a girl, you're working, you can't go to school, okay? The reason why you fucked your life up was a bad decision that you made 5 years ago. That is absolutely true. But if you fixate and overfixate and hyperfixate on that mistake for the rest of your life, you will always be stuck and you will never advance. At some point, you have to say, okay, that mistake was made. I acknowledge it, but I need to figure out what can I do right now going forward to fix things. It is an undeniable fact that even past slavery, even past Jim Crow, even past 64, civil rights and everything, even past our first black president, there are probably some racial issues that exist in this country today. But we cannot continue to fixate on the mistakes of the past and pretend that those mistakes are the reasons why today everything is continuing to be as bad as it is. We can acknowledge that we came from a fucked up place, but we have to be able to analyze what's existing today that lets us move forward rather than fixating on a past that half the country doesn't even want to fully acknowledge. Like I said before, I can get people on board with so many programs that would be better for black people, better for Hispanics, better for the entire fucking country, better for poor people. But I can't do that if we want to obsessively talk about how horrible people were in Nixon's campaign. That's my perspective on things.
It's not just specifically talking about how horrible people were in Nixon's campaign. That only pertains to the drugs. Yes, Nixon did a bunch of other racist things, and Reagan also did things, and so did Bill Clinton. But the point of the matter is, that specific thing is just when you don't acknowledge where something comes from or what the intention is, then you sometimes can't identify the harm, right? Like when you say that you want to know what to do to fix it, that's why we need things like HR 40, where they actually have task force to actually determine what was the economic impact of the previous Jim Crow laws, of the previous racism and systemic racism in this country. And so then we can say, wait, hold on. Then when we actually study these things, then we can see if they are still impacting us today.
Sure, but here's the problem, because what we're left with today are the effects of those systems. And right now,
said something else really quick. You said also half the country doesn't want to acknowledge it, and I agree that half the country doesn't want to acknowledge it. But that's because a lot of times we're ignorant about these things. But then when you start saying things like I'm ready to abandon the phrase of abandon CRT, it's been whatever. You're basically allowing people, anytime we actually come up with an idea that would actually be helpful, you allow people to hijack, straw man, and misrepresent the issue, and then at that point say, well, yeah, it doesn't have any value anymore because people just hear what they want to hear. And so then anytime we actually try to do things to rectify the issue, you're arming the opposition with the ability to straw man and just remove it. And that's what you're doing.
There is a world where we remove all of the systemic injustices and where we get rid of all of the racism in the country, and we fix that and we acknowledge it and we're happy with that, and black people are still fucked. I don't care about that world. That's not something I'm looking for. What I'm looking at is, what are the problems that we have today and what are the best ways to fix it? Some of that fixing requires an acknowledgement of the past, but an overfixation on it, I don't think is the answer.
Sure. You keep saying that word over fixation, and I don't think I'm overly fixating. What I think I'm doing is I'm actually just accurately recognizing that these harms actually happen while I'm constantly encountering from both the overt opposition in the forms of Republicans and the covert oppositions from the freaking liberals who want to do every symbolic gesture they can while literally refusing to actually acknowledge the issues. So yes, we know what can actually fix these problems. Yes, there's a world where we can get rid of all the racism and it would suddenly fix a whole bunch of issues and we wouldn't be running into and black people would still be screwed over. Why? Because an object in motion remains in motion unless opposed by an equal and opposite force. So, if you set people up on this trajectory, you've literally completely dismantled the black family, then yeah, you can fix all the systemic racism. But if you already have people who are set up and advantaged and you let those people encounter the system, then the people who are disadvantaged are always going to be behind. In fact, the wealth gap will continue to minimize and things like it already has. None of these policies that are supposed to be general that can help everybody, none of these problems have ever actually fixed it. They only perpetuate the wealth gap.
What do you want me to say? We fundamentally disagree. Okay.
Yeah, you're just wrong though. That's the problem. It's like you're unwilling to acknowledge the fact. Okay.
Oh so my God! No, hold on. Shit, you're right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just wrong.
Okay, I got you. That's
what was I thinking?
So yeah, I know.
Fuck, I'm so stupid. I'm just wrong. I know. What the fuck?
I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. So then explain to me really quickly. Okay. So what do you think the solution is to fix the economic disparities that continue to plague the black community today? What do you think it is?
What do I think continues to plague the black community, or what are the problems we need to fix?
What do you think the solution is?
Solving problems like poverty is really fucking hard. So I think the solution, it's got to be like a fucking 7-pronged attack, okay? 1, there needs to be investment in black schools. There are a couple of things that just are so good for students. Every student in the United States should have free lunch. Full stop. Every school in the United States should have AC. These are like 2 things that like study after study shows, wow, when kids are comfortable, they learn more. Wow, when kids have food, they do better. Those are 2 things. Those should be made in every community in the United States, especially black communities, if they're not. That's one thing. Second thing, kick out everybody from fucking jail that is on fucking drug charges. What a worthless fucking bullshit piece of shit waste of time, okay? Most of those guys are probably black men, right? Disproportionately. Get them back out on the street, get them back in their homes with their kids. That's the second thing. Third thing, economic opportunity, right? This is going to stem from the schooling thing a little bit, and it's going to stem from having a father in the household. But getting people like working jobs is probably a good thing. I think most black people, or at least most ones that I've met, would probably rather work a job than, be on the fucking streets shooting people for fucking coke. Just from what I've seen, right? Maybe that's not true in your experience or whatever, but just from my limited anecdotal experience. There are probably other types of investments you can make in communities as well, right? There are certain communities that are super run down, the streets are fucked up, blah, blah, blah. Like, when you ask me, like, how can we fix poverty? I can give you like 5 or 10 different, like, multifaceted solutions that would go towards fixing it. But the thing is, when I have those conversations, and maybe this bothers you, I don't have to talk about racism for any of these. You don't even have to agree with me that fucking slavery was bad, right? You might just think black people are shitty people. We might agree. We can even agree on that. Fuck it. Yeah, fuck black people. But if we did all these things, wouldn't it just be better for all of us? I could get people on those arguments. That's how I would approach the problem. And I don't think I would ever have to invoke the word racism to get people on my side to agree with it.
Sure, maybe not. Well, I don't know. People are still not going to agree with it because if you don't explain why we would be doing these things, then no one's going to agree with it. In order to say, hey, we need to do this thing, we're going to direct funds specifically in this area, then you're going to have white people who are going to feel like, wait, why are we aiming it specifically at black people? Why would we do this? It seems like kind of unfair. In fact, we're going to say that this thing is racism, as the nigga was saying on the panel yesterday. If you ever do any of these things and aim them directly at black people, then then all the people are going to sit there and say, no, this is racist to white people. So you have to acknowledge why you're doing that. There you go, hitting that piano again, huh?
I'm not even hitting that piano, but no, you don't have to say the reason why. You wouldn't say it's because of race. You say, well, because these communities are fucked.
Well, okay, but then when you do that, if you don't directly target the black people in these situations, because as we're seeing, a lot of these issues aren't just based off of poverty. Race is still a relevant factor. They are doing studies even recently where they said, hey, schools, poor white schools and poor black schools with similar amounts of students, the black schools are still receiving like about $12 billion less in funding annually, right? So this is the thing that's happening.
Wait. But that's the reason why isn't because of right now. It's not because of racism. It's going to be a confluence of other reasons. There's not an evil guy pushing a button who's like, all right, I've got the black funds here, I'm going to turn them down, and the white funds here, I'm going to turn them up. It's probably because these are communities that either have stronger supports built for them, they've got higher property taxes, they've traditionally been more engaged with the government, and those reasons might stem from racism,
not
sure.
Higher property
But
taxes. They said poor. They're similarly situated people.
okay, well, for whatever reason they're getting federal funds. I don't think it's because some people like white people and some people hate black people.
You don't want to think so because you're in denial of all the race.
I am in denial.
Of course.
My white brother.
So the other thing is,
not you, sorry. My white brothers aren't racist, okay? We're trying our best.
I got you, sure. So the other thing that you're talking about, as far as like prison reforms and things like that, sure. Like, I mean, all of those things are good policy. It still won't fix, it won't rectify the economic issues that have already plagued people. The country is founded on capitalism, which is a beautiful system. But that means that you need to have money in order to achieve the success that you need. So that means if you have money, like for example, you interact with something like the bail system, right? If you have money, then people who are able to bail are less likely to plea out and things like that because they still have the comfort of their home, and then they're not losing jobs and things like that just because they can't continue to work while they're waiting for whatever sham trial to happen, right? So that cash bail is going to harm people who are like obviously impoverished. We already can see that there's a difference between poverty-stricken black people and middle-class black people as far as college attendance, as far as wealth generation, as far as all these things. So it's not just race. Sure, it would probably be like a confluence of like race and economics and other social factors, but if you sit here and deny all of the race, then you're going to continue to perpetuate some of these problems, because even those people in the middle class blacks are still experiencing some of the problems that are really directly related to race.
Okay. Where do you want to go with this? We're not going to agree. Fanatic, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When white people talk about racism, it's hard because it doesn't affect me, okay? And I don't truly see non-white people as human as I do. So it's hard for me to empathize. What am I supposed to say?
Yeah, what you're supposed to say is you're supposed to actually educate yourself on these issues so that we can actually have a more informed talk. But let me explain why. When you're talking about like freaking what was it? Redlining.
Yes.
And you have no idea what the freak redlining is.
I didn't know everything about you're right,
no,
dude.
No.
I only know two famous black people.
About
Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
No. Don't try to misrepresent it that way.
It's
not that you didn't. It's not that you didn't know everything.
I couldn't name a single Tupac album, dude.
It's not that you didn't know everything about redlining. You can try to resort to your memes because I got you red-handed in 4K. You didn't know the fundamental principles of what redlining was to begin with. You didn't even know that it was the federal government that was doing it. But it's okay. That's why Fanatic's here to educate you. So look, it's really simple. Redlining was something that was done by the federal government, not the banks. The federal government decided, hey, we're having a problem. We're in the middle of a freaking a housing crisis, and we're trying to offset the poverty that's affecting white people. And that's what they did with the New Deal. So the same thing that we're talking about, if we actually understand what happened before, we can actually recreate these things and actually this time do them for black people. So what they did was they ended up coming up with the zoning areas, determining who they could loan money to, and then they decided everybody who was neighborhoods that were black or really close proximity to black neighborhoods could not get this funding, while they continue to give these houses towards white people. The government didn't directly loan the money. The government insured the loans that were directly loaned by the banks. The banks had decided to tighten up and weren't going to be loaning money to anybody. So the government got on board and said, hey, we'll insure your loans to make sure that you don't lose capital, but you can only loan to white people. This is where white people started generating all these massive amounts of wealth that they're still experiencing generationally that has been compounding today. Black people never had access to that. So if we acknowledge the racist history of the redlining, then we can say, as a country, we did owe black people this. We did owe black people the ability to actually pursue their dreams and have the pursuit of happiness in the same way that we did white people. Then we can actually come up with policy that says we should aim this directly at the black people who were negatively impacted by our racist history. That's why we would need to acknowledge the racism so that we're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, running around in circles trying to figure out how the hell to fix a problem that we don't even know what the cause is. But you don't even know that history. You had no idea.
I didn't know all the history, and I'm glad you told me. I feel
like
the
fundamentals.
I didn't even know I didn't even know the fundamentals. Okay.
Absolutely.
I thought that redlining.
But
I thought when people walked in the bank, there were guys that had giant fucking markers. And when they saw black people, they drew a red line across their forehead and it meant don't loan money to this guy. That's what I thought it was. But now I know. The federal government making districts, saying that you can't have people moving in here that look a certain way, and then banks were following suit. That's wild. I've learned something today. Okay.
Okay, and then it didn't just stop there. As they were also doing that, they also created these subsidies for people who were creating all of this federal housing and these giant suburbs. And in those subsidies, the requirement was that you could not sell these houses to white people. I mean, you couldn't sell these houses to black people. And at the same time, while they were doing that, they built these large like plants and power. I mean, plants.
Can you link me? Just link me your GoFundMe. Okay, I'm ready to contribute. I'm sorry. How do I make it right?
Look,
how do I make it right?
Look, you can always go ahead, lauren.riley@gmail.com. That's how you can go ahead and donate to the PayPal. But my point being, so this thing, if you don't understand, genuinely, if you don't understand like what the history is, then it's so easy to dismiss why we would need a specific racial correction, because these were specifically targeted racial racial policies, that are the racist policies. That's the problem.
Okay.
Do you not understand that?
I don't deductively agree with your logic. I think we can fix all of these things without even knowing where they come from. But that's going to send us back into a loop. But you know what? Maybe you're right. And time will tell. Or the Republicans will take over the country when Trump loses the next election and they have a revolt.
No, Trump's going to win this next election. It's scary as hell to me. It's gross. All right. The other thing that you said, poor white people don't feel their privilege, right?
That is
that's
something
a pretty
I
stupid
say.
take, right?
No, I don't. I think that's true.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and attack that.
Okay.
When you sit here and you say stupid stuff like poor white people don't feel their privilege, it's like taking a macro issue, right? It's taking like something like that's a more broad issue and saying that people don't feel that at the personal level. And of course they don't. No one would ever do that. It's so unintelligent, right? If we were talking about like people's contributions towards the war on towards the freaking hole in the ozone layer, right? Like you wouldn't sit there and be like, yeah, you don't feel that when you go ahead and I don't know, whenever you use this aerosol can. Like, of course not. These issues are more broad societal issues, and that's the way that they're impactful. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule, but you're not supposed to feel these effects. You're supposed to acknowledge and be aware of these effects. You can't necessarily feel discrimination unless you have like a comparison, right? Like when my mother just recently refinanced her house because of the crazily low interest rates, and they were being racist and trying to give her low comps as they commonly do to black people. She had to generate her own comps, so she had to go and say, fine, let me find other similar houses, yada, 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 and show them like, okay, and I have these upgrades on my house. Y'all got to give me a better deal. They still wouldn't do it, and she ended up having to leave that company and go into another one to actually get the refinance there. But maybe she might have felt like or thought, there was a racist thing that was happening here. But very often, without some sort of comp, in order to compare, you don't know that it's racist. So in this case, like that's why they're doing all these sting operations where they have black people whose homes are getting appraised incredibly terribly, and then you have white people that'll go say, okay, I'll do the exact same appraisal for the exact same property. We'll just put up white pictures instead, and then you increase the value of the home by 25 to 50%. Without doing the second part, the control group, if you will, without doing that, you'll never know that it's racist. All you can do is go off of what you're experiencing. But why would you ever try to talk about systemic issues, broad issues at a personal level? That's stupid.
But when you attack people for their privilege, that's kind of what you're doing. That's why I'm just saying it's bad to go to an individual and be like, hey, you should feel bad for your white privilege. Everything you're saying is true, but people aren't conducting like double blind studies to see like where the racism is or isn't. People don't engage with life on a personal level that way.
But first off, yes, if you're attacking people, like general, broadly, white people for their privilege, then yeah, maybe that makes sense. But most of the time, it's not like black people are going around just necessarily attacking individuals. The only time that they do that is when the individuals are being instrumental in denying the harm that's actually happening to
sure, but I'm just saying
people.
It's probably just never a good idea to attack an individual and be like, hey, like you have white privilege, when like a lot of poor white people probably don't feel that way, right? That's the equivalent of like a black person complaining about shit in the United States. Like, hey, bro, you're lucky to live here. Because that is fucking true, but probably not a good response to any kind of argument, right? Like,
okay, yes, but the problem is when you have white people who feel like they don't have that white privilege, they're just wrong. And that's why we need education. That's why we need CRT. Because again, these feelings can't really be identified unless you're talking about broader studies. Because whenever we're talking about this discrimination or these systemic issues, we're not talking about individuals. There have always been some wealthy black people. Jay-Z's worth like close to $2 billion. That doesn't mean that systemic issues don't exist. And maybe you might say, oh, black people have lower education rates. rates. That doesn't mean that I fall under that category, or black people's credit score. That doesn't necessarily apply to me, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand these things at an intellectual level, which is why we need CRT. When you defend the way poor white people feel as opposed to the actual systems that are engineered against black people, it seems like an unfair dismissal. Do you not understand that?
I'm not trying to discount the experiences that black people have. I'm only talking.
But that's what you're effectively doing.
Well, then fuck me, I guess. The white moderate strikes again. What can I say? At the end of the day, I'm tribalistic. They look like me, okay? They look like me. How can I not take their side?
Yeah. So that's the problem, is I think very often, like, and I think in the same way that, like, you have this criticism about Vaush, but I absolutely think it applies to you as well, where, like, a lot of times, like, Vaush is, like, employing these arguments because they make good debates for him, but it's not necessarily because he believes in any of these things. One of the most deplorable things ever was after Derek Chauvin was, like, sentenced, Vaush literally said on his stream, he did a gesture and said, "We all did this. We all did this," as if he had some direct impact on why Derek Chauvin was convicted, and then said, "And it's glorious. I'm going to be debating about this over the next 6 months with conservatives." He didn't care about the actual injustice and the relief that black people feel when it feels like there's finally some sort of systemic, like, or there's some actual convictions or justice for some egregious injustices that are happening, right? He didn't feel that. What he felt was an economic opportunity, like, brought on by him debating Republicans. I think that's disgusting. And I feel like a lot of times when you've had these debates, and I've always appreciated because you've pushed back against the most egregious racists of all time, when you've done that, it's like, man, this dude's really, really good at that. But then when you start actually digging into it and you find out that you don't actually know any of the things that are, you don't really know intimately any of these stories of, or the policies or what exactly is happening. You might just study, do a study or two in order to determine, like, oh, this supports my argument. Then it hurts a little bit because it's like, dang, man, I really looked up to this guy. I was hoping he was one of the, he was the one. And you're not.
Nobody makes the jump on the first try, okay? I'm sorry.
But why do you try to make light of it and make it such a comical thing when I'm, like, literally, like, genuinely telling you, I'm not. You've given me the opportunity to come into this space for, like, 2 years.
Yeah.
I've come in here maybe a total of 5 times. I'm not in here just trying to grab some content.
I don't think you are. I agree. I understand. But we have, like,
I'm making a general appeal to your decency, and it seems like you're willing to make a joke.
Hold on. No, you can't say I'm appealing to your decency to get you to logically agree to some argument. That's a little bit underhanded, my friend. Okay?
Oh, am I?
Well, yeah, of course. You can't appeal to common decency as a way to convince me of an argument.
Well, no, it's what the appeal to decency is, to get you to take some of these things a little bit more seriously so as to prevent some of the further harms that you're causing. But every time I point it out to you, nah, you're not, bro. You and I both know that you've, like, look, bro, come on.
No, I do. I'm not gaslighting you. I consider all perspectives. This will be something that weighs on me. Say I get, like, fucking 6 more emails and all black people are like, yo, it's true when you do the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, fuck, maybe I'll weigh this in the future. Maybe it'll be a little bit different. But right now, if somebody would ask me, do you think we pay a little bit too much attention to privilege, or do you think we don't pay enough attention to privilege? I would say, societally speaking, and where the common discourse is, we have hyper fixated on it to a cancerous amount, where everything has become white supremacy, everything has become colonialism, everything has become, the remnants, the ghosts, the echoes of slavery and Jim Crow. And it's like, holy fuck, like, we are paralyzed. We cannot have any conversations about moving anything forward in this country because we want to obsess over what's happened in the past. Like, people are more concerned trying to figure out, like, how old Pocahontas was when she was raped by fucking John Smith or Christopher Columbus, whoever, than they are figuring out, like, how the fuck do we fix our schools today? Or how the fuck do we get people to, like, function in society without being drug dealers or getting locked up in jail? And I don't know, like, that hyperfixation on the past by a bunch of fucking middle class, upper class people that are going to, UC schools is like, well, fuck, what the fuck is the point of this? Like, all of their rhetoric is dribbling down from their ivory league towers, and then it's toxifying the common discourse, and now we're, like, on the verge of a fucking civil war. So it seems like that's just been a bad path, and I'm trying to look for something different. But my path might just be, crouching white man, hidden moderate, and maybe that's all I'm doing at the end of the day. Looking over my back for that Birmingham jail to see Martin Luther King sending ravens out, warning people about me. I don't like the idea of like attacking the idiots in, like, academia and on Twitter and stuff like that, and, like, as if those are the only arguments. I think the argument that I'm presenting to you and the arguments that you're giving, right? Like, you're on the ground level, like, talking to people with really huge platforms. You can give these arguments, and these arguments don't have to be hyper fixated or like construed some crazy psycho way. I'm not talking about the age of Pocahontas or any of that kind of nonsense. Most of the time, the things that I'm talking about are things that literally have direct impacts on people living today.
which is why I've always avoided slavery. Man, I should start playing the piano when you're talking because I'm so much better at the piano than you, and you know it. But I think like when we start looking at things like again, redlining. My mother, redlining ended legally, even though there were still like hidden packets of it, in 1968. The house that my grandmother left to my mother 3 years ago was impacted by redlining. That affected her inheritance 3 years ago. That's still impacting people today, right? Like, so I'm not just talking.
I didn't disagree with you. What do you want me to? I'm not disagreeing.
Okay, good. So then I'm not. So then these conversations can be centered around real, impactful things, and you don't have to retreat to some of the more nonsensical things that you're comparing it to, like the age of Pocahontas.
What is it? Hold on.
Okay. Colonialism in freaking Africa. What?
Let's back up for a second. What are we even disagreeing on right now? Can you tell me?
Okay, so the few things that we disagreed on. First, the thing that we disagreed on was you like pretty much implying that the war on drugs was not racist. One, from its inception, it seemed like you were originally saying until you got educated, and then two, that there are no racist bad actors that are perpetuating the war on drugs with racist intent in power today. That was one of the things that we disagreed on. The second things we disagreed on was that reparations should only be for things that you're promised. Even though now I'm pretty sure you're aware that the money that the United States gave to Holocaust survivors, even though we're not literally we weren't the ones that did the Holocaust. The money that we gave to Mexican Americans, the money we gave to Native Americans, and so on and so forth. If all of these reparations that we're doing aren't about wrongs promised, so that just seems like you're choosing to create a frame for reparations only as it applies to Black people, as opposed to looking at saying what we've historically done, what reparations have historically, what the purpose of them have been, and saying that we can do those same things for Black people. That's one of the things that we disagreed on. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was a disagreement because you really didn't have an argument for it. It was the redlining thing. You were just wrong about it, and I educated you. That's it.
Thank you for the education. Okay.
Yeah. Another thing that you said. Let me see. Hold on. I think I had two more. When I was talking about some of the things that like Black people, like the reason why like riots and things like that happen, you said the only thing that we haven't tried was voting. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because people aren't like voting enough, and it's probably not good that they're not voting enough. Something, yeah.
Okay, so what would that mean then? That if all of the people who did vote, like that, they would have some sort of right to riot? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm just saying that like there's like the meme comic where it's like we've tried nothing and we're all out of options. Where it's like if we want to change certain policies, voting is the way to do it. But what if what if Black people have been voting? Again, what if there was like 60% turnouts, right? And they still weren't able to achieve the thing? If there were 60% turnouts during local elections and things weren't changing, it would blow my fucking mind.
Yeah. So, and again, let me make sure that we're clear here. So any Black person who did vote in those scenarios, since they voted and they did their job, then now they have the right to riot?
No, I mean, that's not how it works. What do you mean? You have to get lots of people to vote. If one person goes and votes and everyone else doesn't, it's not like that person go right. I mean, they've got more like moral justification, I guess, but like, or maybe they can feel a little bit more responsible. But like, no, I mean, what
it sounds like, because when we're talking about the people who are rioting, who feel like completely disenfranchised, like the government is not working on their behalf and seems like it's being harmful, you were saying that these people don't have a right to riot.
They're mad because they're not getting the outcomes that they want from the government in a democratic institution. That's, I mean, but like, all you can do is vote.
But it's not just about the things that you want. It's about the things that are just, right?
No, fuck justice. That's up for debate. We live in a democracy. What is justice?
Oh, sure. Of course it's up for debate. But I know that you would argue that there are some people who would have more purchasable arguments about justice, right? Like you would be able to say, look, you can say that it's not unjust to have a system that basically says Black people are property, but you can argue that that's just, but we all know that it's not. And any person who recognizes that injustice has all of the agency necessary to go ahead and do whatever they feel necessary to offset that, right?
We're getting into dicey territory where we're trying to say some people's moralities in a democracy is so good that they have like the right to like enact violence because they're not getting the like the desired electoral outcomes.
Let's not take it to the riot part yet. Let's just make sure that we're establishing the fact that some people have more foundation for the arguments of their belief of justice, right?
I probably would agree. There's some forms of morality and moral systems that are more justifiable than others. Probably, yeah.
Absolutely. So then if a person happens to be subscribing to one of those kind of moral systems, like saying something like, hey, I'm not property, or you just simply saying, I'm not going to do business with black people, is really unjust. So the other white people could say, no, I have a freedom and it's just for me to do whatever the freak I want to. I would say that a person probably has a better ground to stand on in like indicating that this is not justice, right? And if that's the case, then those people get to make arguments, and now their feelings are not unfounded in feeling like the system isn't working for their behalf, right?
No.
So you're saying that, okay, explain to me why that's not right.
It's a total non sequitur, right? You're here, let's look at the syllogism. Some people can have better moral systems than others. True, sure. That's a really, but we'll say that's true. 2, people with the better moral systems are voting. 3, they're not getting their desired outcomes in the electoral process. Conclusion, therefore, they have a right to feel like the system isn't serving them and they're getting fucked. No. You're not guaranteed any outcome in a democratic system. It doesn't give you a right to be violent if you don't get what you want. No, even if you are coming from a better place.
But is there belief in your own syllogism?
Oh, that the system's not working? No, that's not either. That's not true. No, the system, the way the system works.
No, is there belief? That's not the question. Is there belief that the system is unjust and is enacting injustices against them? Is that a valid feeling?
No.
Is that a valid belief?
I mean, you can always feel like people are being unjust against you, but I mean, like, that's how the system works. It's what it's supposed to do.
Right. So is there feeling, again, or is there belief that the system is enacting injustices against them well-founded?
Sure, I guess. In the same way that if they voted against another person, maybe that other person feels like there's an injustice, I guess, but sure.
Okay, so this is where the problem is, because you keep trying to like play fast and loose with feelings versus like well-founded actual arguments, right?
No, hold on. There is no well-founded actual argument.
Okay, sure. You can say that there's no well foundation for them, but any person with a working brain listening to this right now can tell there's a difference between saying, hey, I am recognizing that there's an injustice happening at a systemic level or whatever, like when they say separate but equal, but they know that the things aren't equal. We can recognize that as something that's being unjust. And then trying to compare that to, well, white people feel unjust, feel that it's unfair when you allow black people to go to schools with them. These two things are not the same.
I agree that they're not the same. I don't, like you're trying.
That's what you're reducing it to.
You're trying to build an argument right now where you can provide a justification for some group of people to feel like if they don't get the desired outcome at the ballot box, they can feel oppressed by a government. Like, and it's not even the worst argument, but like this is taking us down to libertarianism, where the state is always enacting some form of oppression against you. Like,
I'm not saying that the state is always doing that. Again, I'm not sitting here. I'm not some freaking. I'm not. What's that one? Fabian Liberty idiot. Like, I'm literally talking about like, hey. Do people have just because what you've said in the beginning was that people don't like no one has a right to feel like the system is being unjust to them, basically, and you're wrong. Obviously, you obviously people can feel like not only feel, people can have well-founded arguments to support the fact that the system is working unjustly. Hell, the government has redressed some of its problems, saying, hey, these things were unjust. So yes, people can recognize that even in a democracy, people can enact legislation that is unjust.
I don't know what you want me to say. I don't even know what the fuck we're arguing about right now. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, it's because it's one of these things where you're arguing all of the most banal points because you just don't want to get to the conclusion. It's insane to me. You literally just spent the last 5 minutes arguing basically that people don't have that people can't have well-founded claims of unjust systems as long as it's democratic.
I'm just saying that it's not to the point where we can, if we're getting to the point where we don't like our democratic outcome, we can like enact violence for it because we feel like there's a great
I'm not talking about the writing yet. I'm just trying to establish that first so then we can get to the next point.
You can always feel like the system is unjust against you. That I would agree. But like what a worthless statement.
Okay, yeah, it's worthless. So my point being, yeah.
Like look at Roe v. Wade. You can always feel like there's an injustice regardless of what side you're on. Like of course, anybody could feel like there's an injustice, but I mean that's part of living in a democracy. The state's always gonna be fucking you somehow.
Sure, but then you just need to make sure that your arguments are well-founded. And some things I think are not as easy to argue against, right? You would say that there are some things that are so on their face that there are no real purchasable arguments against them.
If it came up to vote, can we lynch black people? And they voted yes, and you were like, Destiny, don't you think that's a little fucked up? Don't you think they have a right to feel fucked up? You know what? I'd be like, hell yeah, dude. Let's fucking march. Let's go, okay? Let's grab I got a new shotgun. Let's go. But when you tell me, when people are disagreeing about the exact ways that say reparations should be dealt with or funds should be allocated to schools, and then the voter turnout in the local election is 25%, don't you think those people have a right to feel like they're being oppressed? Yeah, I guess, but it's way different. We're at so many levels removed of like severity and obvious wrongness that like this conversation is so lost in the weeds. I feel like I'm Airbud on that island after the kid dropped him off and he started boating away. I can't see where the fuck I'm going.
Sure, we'd probably get there faster if you weren't sitting there and trying to debate me on every small banal point, as opposed to letting us actually get to the conclusion. Like, you're literally so defensive on every single piece of information that you literally just argue that people don't have any justifiable arguments for people to feel like a system is unjust as long as it's democratic. It's crazy. And then, okay, what was the then when you look at places where like voter turnout was like incredibly high, right? Or here's a better example. Let's look at someone like Asian Americans. Their voter turnout is so incredibly low, right?
Is it really?
20s and 30%? Yes.
Why? Damn.
It always has been. Their voter turnout can be sometimes in the 20s and 30%, yet they don't get the same outcomes. So I don't think voter turnout is the thing that's really the biggest determining factor on whether or not you're going to get economic justice in the system.
Well, that's probably because depending on where you come from, if you're an Asian American, you probably don't need the help, right?
Well,
so I mean, it's a different type of thing, yeah?
Well, the reason why they don't need the help is because, one, they're already viewed as a model minority, so they already get better opportunities. And of course, yes, like if you're migrating and you're wealthy and all those other factors. But the fact of the matter is, we can say that voter turnout isn't even one of the leading determining factors on whether or not you're getting economic justice.
Maybe. That's a
maybe.
We gotta. Here's a question. If I could push a button right now, okay, simple question to cut right through the bullshit. Okay, I've taken my scythe out. Okay, you ready? I'm coming into your garden. If we could push a button right now, and all of the voter turnout in the United States would say the same, except for black people. Their voter turnout turned up to 100%. Every single motherfucking black person was voting. Okay, if that was the case, would you expect to see policies in the United States start to change or no?
If we're going to stay in the current state, no, I would not. And the reason is because Democrats...
I totally disagree.
I got you. Let me explain why, and then maybe you can see if you disagree. The reason is because Democrats in this country have historically been able to count on black votes. I think they said black women are like the most concentrated voting bloc in the country, in the sense that 90% of black women vote Democrat. So then when black votes have been so concentrated in the Democratic Party, and they've literally not given us any tangibles or anything that actually makes sense, then no, it doesn't matter if all of us vote. They don't have any reason to do so. Why buy the cow when the milk is free? Right? So no, I don't think that would change anything. There has to be some sort of...
Hold on, to be clear, 95% of black women don't vote. So it's a fundamentally different point, but...
I'm not saying 95%. What do you mean 95%? So you're saying only 5% of black women vote?
No. That's what you're saying of the black women that do vote, 95% of them vote for the Democrats. I'm telling you, the voter rate for black women, though, is not 95%. It's probably
I'm not saying that.
20
That's
or 30%.
not what I said.
Oh, okay, but I'm just...
choose my words very carefully.
I know, but I'm just saying so it's not relevant. I'm saying if 100% of black people were voting, you don't think any of the policies would change?
So, okay, I'm sorry, just to make sure that we're still engaging with the argument that I get and not this straw man, 90% of black women, the 90% of the voting black women do vote for the Democratic Party, yet they still are unwilling unwilling to give them any of the tangibles necessary to offset any of the economic damage that has been done to them. Why would you buy the cow when the milk is free? So if 90% of black women are voting for the Democrat Party, they feel no need to actually give us anything. They already got us. So that's my point.
They've got some percentage of people that vote, sure, but if that percentage of people that would vote would go up, I think it would be a little bit different, right? Like, what percentage of the electorate are comprised of black women? Like 3%?
I don't know.
4%, maybe?
It's got to be more than that. If we're 13% of the I don't know the number.
Well, you said you're 13% of this population, right? But despite being only 13% of the population, they probably don't make up 13% of the vote, right? Because that's going to be overwhelmingly white and wealthy. So then that's probably dropping to 7.
Male and female.
Sure, then 7 or 6%. And then of those people, what percentage of them are voting that are women, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's probably like at the end of the day, we can look this up. Hold on. Composition. Oh, fuck. What would I look up? Percentage of voters who are black women. Oh God, I'm not gonna be able to find a quick and easy number on this. All I'm saying is that if every black person voted and there'd be more black women voting, they'd probably look at that constituency a bit more, right? Because right now the Democratic Party doesn't do anything for black women. It's probably not because they're taking the vote for granted. It's probably because they're just a really, really small percentage of the electorate.
No, but black people, black women, I think women vote more than black men. Hold on. Wait, let me have to go into all that.
Okay. But I'm just saying it's such a small constituency that like you could tell me today.
So then if 100% of them voted, then that would only be 6.5%.
Yeah, but it'd be a much bigger percentage than a constituency. It'd be a larger representation because more than
already the majority of black women are voting.
No,
the majority of black women are voting.
Not in local elections. There's just no shot. I'm pulling them right
I mean, obviously, if you go to local elections, it's going to vary depending on the region, right?
Yeah, but that's really important for things like criminal justice.
Sure, I got it. So then, would you say that the black women in California, who actually have higher turnouts ever since the 1996 riots or 1992 riots, like, are you saying that they have like a more of an argument in favor of like being able to do whatever the frick they want to do? Like,
why would you have an argument to do whatever you want to do just because you vote? Do you get like a fuck shit up card at the voting booth? Did I miss these?
It's just that when you make this dismissals of people who are rioting, when it seems like all of the civil justice that has happened in this country for black people is directly tied to violence, right? Then it seems like if you're going to dismiss people's right to violence, say, well, but no, because they're just not voting enough. And then we determine that one, not only are they voting, but they're incredibly concentrated with their votes and still not getting any of the tangibles they need. It seems like a weightless argument.
I don't know what you want me to say.
It feels like you're in.
I'm lost at sea.
I understand why
I feel like I'm Zelda
it's really hard
in the
to
Wind
contend
Waker.
with these ideas. It's really hard to contend with these ideas. They're so factually based. So then, okay, so yeah, it's crazy that you would try to justify some of these outcomes by voting when we already know, again, Asians don't participate in local elections or presidential elections.
Asians don't need the help, my dude. They're fucking. A lot of them are loaded.
Absolutely. So then it seems like just simply tying all of these things towards voting seems like a misstep. Obviously.
Well, some people do need help where voting is important, probably, right?
Well, the thing is, in the places where they vote, like, again, the places that are getting the most discrimination where the most giant harms are happening are in large democratic cities. Right? Like, so it's not like, okay, we can say like, yeah, man, you guys should vote and stuff. In places like California where people are voting like crazy, we're still not getting any, the racism is still there. It doesn't feel like it's fixing it.
Okay. Tell us what we have to do. Hit us up with a solution. Go.
I would say one thing that I actually advocate is one for black people to start being a lot more selective with their voting or even abstaining from the voting process. And the reason being, again, when both parties are working against us, we understand that Republicans are overtly racist, sure. But when you have the Democrat Party that continues to string us along while doing everything they can in order to like benefit all the other people that are voting for them, while depending really heavily on the black vote, it seems like we're just literally giving them all of the opportunity to continue to do so. What would be another a perfect? Destiny, are you familiar with the phrase benign neglect?
No. Enlighten me. Educate me.
Okay. Benign neglect was a thing that Moynihan said, where it was basically the idea that, hey, we've made enough progress for black people. This is, I think, around 1968, where we've made enough progress for black people. So now we just go ahead, since we gave them the voting rights and we gave them the Civil Rights Acts and the Fair Housing Act, and let's maybe just chill back and not do anything for black people anymore, and instead focus on other groups, right? And that's continuing to happen today, where now, as opposed to actually focusing on black issues, then you focus on LGBTQ people, you focus on women, you focus on Hispanics, you focus on immigrants, and everything besides black people. It has been a political policy that has been enacted by pretty much the vast majority of presidents since 1968.
Damn, that's fucked.
Yeah. I'm glad, man, I wish you would take more time to educate yourselves on these things so then you could actually understand that some of these racist policies are still there.
Okay, I'll dig into it more, okay?
Pretty dismissive, buddy.
I love you so much, okay? What else? Are we good?
I think that's it. Let me see. Hold on. Let me make sure there's nothing left in the... Oh, lastly.
Yep.
Locutions. What's a locution, bro?
Locution? Like L-O-C-U-T-I-O-N?
Mm-hmm.
I think... Isn't that an utterance regarded in terms of its intrinsic meaning or reference as distinct from its function or purpose in context, I think?
No. That's not the way I've always used it. I know you just read that, but I'm saying, if we look in Merriam-Webster, a locution is basically a specific phrase that it's kind of used in a general region that's kind of particular to either a race, a group, a country, or so on and so forth.
Oh, so no. Okay. What are you talking to me about?
Yeah, you already know what this is.
Oh, wait.
Intelligent man. Intelligent man. I said you're an intelligent
Wait, hold on. Is it a word that starts with the letter O?
No, the letter N.
Oh, thank
what
God. Sorry.
word?
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
No, can you text that to me? I want to know what word you're talking about.
I have made bad friends, and I picked up a word, and I think it's a racist word, but I don't know.
Text it to me, Destiny. Text it to me.
Okay. If
I don't know what word you're talking about. Let me see.
is that racist?
Let me see. Hold on. No, that's not racist. That's
Oh,
such a
okay.
stupid phrase.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, octoroon.
You been spamming that one, buddy?
Gotcha. No, but I heard somebody refer to it to make fun of people that are like, oh, like I'm 1/8 black or whatever. And then I heard octoroon, but then somebody said that's like because it's like
No, it's a legally codified term. Yeah.
Oh, based. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we used to use back in my day. We used to use mulatto a lot, but I think that's like a racist word now, right? Or like if somebody says that, people would be like,
yeah, it can be considered, but that's part of where we're going with this, right?
Okay,
like all of this nonsense. So you know, Beyonce just came out with an album and it's absolutely fire. It's ridiculous, okay? But inside of that album, like she used the word spaz, and then people got really upset at her and said, hey, that's an ableist slur, right? And I feel like in the same sense, when you heard like where we've had this N-word, the N-word debates, talking about whether or not you should be able to say nigga or not, or the word coon. I think all of these are locutions, right? Let me actually just find the definition of locution so that we're not talking past each other really quick. Although the word is not necessarily the most important. Hold on, one second. Yeah, a particular form of expression or a particularity of phrasing, or a peculiarity of phrasing, especially a word or expression characteristic of a region, group, or cultural level. So obviously a word like nigga would immediately be a locution, right? Or then there's more common ones like sugar, where like sugar has a specific meaning that's kind of like germane to the South and things like that. Okay. I would say that it's absolutely ridiculous to have white folks policing black people on their locutions that don't have the same value. Like, for example, when we say the word cunt in the United States, it's incredibly offensive to women, right? Whereas, like, yes, it probably might still be somewhat of a minor slur in like the UK. It doesn't have at all the same amount of vitriol. Same thing with like nigga. Black people say nigga, we know what the freak we mean. White people say it, it's like, not quite sure, right? Locutions exist. We do them all the freaking time. So why is it now that white people are coming around policing us and telling us what we mean by the words that we're using that aren't even meant to harm? Do you feel like that's a little bit, do you feel like that's...
I don't have a strong opinion on this because I just super don't give a fuck about these types of things. I'm sorry. I've gotten voice help.
80% of your platform is on N-word discourse. The freak are you talking about? I'm exaggerating, obviously.
Like, I think it's cringe as fuck that like white people and white adjacent people, meaning everybody under the age of 24 who goes to a U.S. college, this includes black people and Hispanic people and Asian people, they've all become white people too, when they're like crying about like these, like trying to make like, it's like, at some point, I've tuned out, dude. I feel like I'm going to go on to Twitter tomorrow and people are going to say, like, the politically correct way to refer to black people is Negro X, okay? Like, that's where I feel like we're at. So when people are freaking out, like, I think we tried to use Filipinx a while ago, even though Filipino is not like a fucking, yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't care. I'm fucking tuned out from all of it. I'm just playing Factorio, okay? That's what I like to do. I like to play video games.
Okay, so we're not going to hear you saying... you're pretty much done with the N-word discourse. That's not going to be a hefty part of your platform moving forward.
Whoa, let's not get extreme.
Of course, you know you're going to be talking about it all the time. I just feel like a lot of times whenever you catch the smoke, it's like, I don't really care. It's like almost a dismissive attitude anytime somebody comes with receipts.
I feel like having conversations about the words that we should or shouldn't use is fine. Society will change slowly over time. I think it's okay to police black people on their language usage. I think it's okay to police anybody on it. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like, if you're going to police a white person on saying spaz, you should probably be able to police a black person on saying spaz, no? Or do you think that's not fair?
I would say so. Sometimes, but it depends on whether the word is like a racial locution, though.
Mm-hmm. Like, how do you get, how do you draw the line, though? Because, like, arguably... people saying fag is like a locution. They're not necessarily referring to gay people. It's part of that. The literal tweet was like, that's our word for gamers. And to some extent, it kind of was. Like,
sure.
There is probably some person that learned when they're like 26 or like, wait, that's referring to gay people? Like, they didn't even know. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, we'd be like, well, hold on. When we're trying to think about words that are okay or not okay, like, you know, what should we say? Like, I don't know if the idea, like, well, it's locution. Some people say it here. I don't know if that's like the best argument or not. I could be wrong.
Well, sure. I would say for that F slur that you just used, I would say maybe that that differs a little bit. One, because obviously, even within the gaming community, it's still used as a derogatory phrase, and outside of the gaming community, it was intentionally like incredibly derogatory, right? So then it's like it's one thing to be able to say like, hey, here's a word that doesn't have the meaning for you. We've never used it in this way. It's not adjacent to whatever the way you guys are using it, and like that's one.
Oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So when black people say spaz, it has nothing to do with like retarded people. I don't know how to say that in a better way.
No, legitimate.
I'm not making. I'm saying like, is that the case?
Yeah. Like until they said it was an ableist slur, I was like, what the frick are you talking about? No one's ever associated spaz with, like, what? What are they even?
Well, for a black person, when you say somebody's a spaz or something, what are they referring to?
No, that's not how you even use it. You would say I'm spazzing out, like I'm going crazy. Most of the time in a positive way.
Is it really a positive thing?
Yes, Beyonce was referring to herself, saying, "I'm watch me spaz out."
If that's the case,
it's retarded, right?
Well, I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not a part of the geographic or community that has that locution, so I can't say. I truly don't know.
Okay, but
because I could conceive of it still being the case that it's still like a bad, like, for instance, I could say like, all right, I'm about to crush this dude. I'm about to go full retard and destroy this guy. And in that case, like, well, is it a slur? Is it ableist? I mean, well, it still kind of is ableist.
Kind of a little bit.
But I don't know in terms of how black people use it, because I've never heard that word used that way. I don't know.
I get it. Or another perfect example is the word coon. Like,
coon?
Coon is coon. C-O-O-N.
Oh, okay. Isn't that like I thought that was Uncle Tom, basically, no?
Yes, for black people, when we use it, it's Uncle Tom. When white people use coon, they're not talking about Uncle Tom.
They're talking about their best friends.
I'm just kidding. No, they were talking. When white people use the word coon, they're literally talking about like they're associating them with like thieves and so on and so forth because they're quote unquote raccoons, right? And
is that true?
Steal. Yeah, that's that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm asking you that like, but that probably was true at one point in time. I feel like today when people are using racial slurs, I don't know if they're ever calling black people coons, just because it's so like archaic. But maybe at one point in time, that's probably true. Sure. Or maybe in the South they still do. Yeah. Sorry.
Sure, but when black people use it, it has never been used as a slur in that way, right?
Gotcha.
It's never to essentialize all black people. Coon was specifically referring to individuals who were working against their own progress, right? Like black people who would sit there like Jesse Lee Peterson types, right? Sure. It's like, okay, this is a coon. That's not essentializing all black people.
Jesus.
So it's like, while the slur absolutely does have, it's like related to race, it's not essentializing the race. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or it's not saying that like everybody of that group has those things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which would be essentializing. So it's basically saying we're like associating with actions. Same thing with Karen. Karen isn't saying that all white women are this way. Karen is more so talking about specific bad actors, right? So it's not essentializing the race, although it is race specific. It used to be until we started, spreading it to everybody else. So then it seems a little insane to me when like we're in these platforms like Twitch where people are literally trying to cancel. I say it. I don't care. You can suck my dick. I say coon because it's like it's insane to me that you could come over there and start saying things like, oh, you can't say that word. And it's like, nigga, this is the way we speak and it does not mean anything like the way that you guys are intending it. And how are you from a white space going to tell black people how to use their locutions? This is how we speak. That's part of AAVE. Why the freak do we have to capitulate to white gays whenever we're discussing things amongst ourselves? The freak?
Based. True. You know that black people aren't allowed to say the N-word on my server?
Yeah.
Oh wait, shit! You were the one that got banned for it.
Yeah, it was me. It was me. Do you understand when you get heated in a debate because you're
and I want to call people the N-word? I understand, dude. I feel that more than you could possibly know. Okay.
I don't doubt it, Destiny. I remember your old VODs, bro. I remember one time you was playing League of Legends in the bot lane and you called somebody a cock-thirsty F slur.
I just sucked a dick that day, so I thought it'd be safe for it. I thought it was good, dude. I was like, damn, maybe this is the guy I sucked off earlier, and his mind is still so blown. He's just fucking feeding the fuck out of my lane. That was the whole point. I was referring to past sexual activity that I did. I didn't mean that against him. I didn't mean anything bad by it, but what are you going to do, man? Our locutions get us in trouble sometimes, you know?
That's what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Another one is a T-slur.
What about
T-slur? They use that as a locution now. Like, they're starting to reclaim it.
No, fuck that. I don't think real trans people do that.
Oh, just online ones?
That's like, people will always say that, like, oh yeah, the trans community is reclaiming tranny. I've never heard that said in a way that just doesn't sound fucking weird. But also, maybe I don't hang out in those communities enough. I don't
No,
like
it is
that word.
weird.
I don't think it's ever. But wait, who just joined? Oh no.
Needed to come in here and just let you know, Kinetic, you're actually wrong on the definition of that word that
Oh
started.
no.
It actually came from the Portuguese word barraca, which meant slave depot. So it has nothing to do with raccoon. So I'd appreciate if you just stopped giving, just false information to everyone out there. This is very widely known and studied, and I don't know why you would try to give it another meaning. It
You
literally
didn't know that right now, but I'm going to look at the
in
I'll look at the
Portuguese.
etymology. Let me make sure that I'm 100%.
Yeah, you can just trust me on this. I've looked into this. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
All right, that's right. Every day you learn. All right, well, have a good day, guys. Take care.
Got you. So in 742 American English, according to the etymology, it was the nickname of Whig Party members in U.S. 1840-60 as the raccoon was the party's
Yeah, but we're
symbol.
talking about the pejorative, not the definition
Yes,
of it
and
used
what
in
I'm
other
saying-
terms.
No, that wasn't the definition I was giving.
So the now insulting U.S.
Giving-
meaning black
No, no, no,
person
no.
was in use
I
in
was
1837,
giving-
and it was
I'm
from the
sorry.
word barracoon in 1837,
Sure.
from the Portuguese word barraca, slave depot, pen,
So
or rough
you're saying
enclosure.
that there was never any.
I'm just saying that perhaps
you.
you should just let this one go. You don't look very good here. This is actually really a bad look on
So
you.
you're saying there was never any association with the raccoon whatsoever?
You know, I think that you're really trying to push here, and this is not a good look. I'm going to go because I don't want to create any more flack for you when you inevitably get called out for this. But there you go. Today you learned. All right, so take care.
Call me
Bye-bye.
out, buddy. You take care. So anyway, so the word
It's so
coon,
bullshit that he gets to come in and do that. Every time I tell Dan that he needs to fucking chill on shit, he always holds that Holocaust stuff over my head and it's fucking pissing me off, okay? But I've got you in here. You need to push back on Dan. I can't do it, okay? I'm white. Half my ancestors were European, the other half were Cuban slave owners. But you, my friend,
I don't know.
you're the
I
one
don't
that
know
has
that
to
nigga.
fight back against Dan when he comes in here and says shit like that. Don't let him get away with it, okay? Next time, push back harder.
I don't know that nigga. All right, and hey, one other thing, bro.
Yeah.
Explain to me why you've been so soft-boiled on Lauren Southern.
I'm just trying to hold on to the few new friends I've made, okay? Is that okay?
Somewhat, but it seems like she's literally running from
this-
the fact that she supported the whole what is it?
Okay, I've carved out this small space of friends I've made on YouTube, and so far nothing crazy has happened yet. I'm trying to maintain that, okay? But when I have conversations with these people, everything, like, I push back as much as I can. You can say that I softball Lauren or Nick. Go watch the fucking videos, okay? Every fucking conversation we have is a huge fucking argument, okay?
Yeah, but okay,
But
I'm
what?
not going into any specifics, but the most obvious, and I would say some of the most egregious harms are
Yeah.
like things that have like they've never walked back and you've never really pushed them on.
Because I'm not here to walk them back on anything. I don't care about that shit. What do you want me to walk them back on?
Why, you know what I want you to walk her back on.
On what? On the boat shit?
No, bro, the thing that I just said that you said we're not talking about.
Okay, sorry. I'm good. Talk about, wait, which thing?
The replacement theory stuff.
Oh. You can try sometime, okay? You can have that debate, okay? Here's
Well,
my
I
thing,
tried
okay?
this-
This is my position. This is the Lauren question. This is my position, okay? She denies it. I think she was a fucking Nazi, okay? But she says she wasn't, so there's no way to get her to walk back on something she doesn't agree that she ever fully believed in. That's my position on it. But, hey, listen, if you want to try to fight with her on someday on that, you can go for it. But anytime I say, hey, don't you think you're a little bit like maybe like a Nazi light at like 2016, 2017? She's like, oh no, when I was talking about great replacement, I just meant culture's changing. And if that's what she wants to say, that's bullshit. But hey, if you want to believe that, knock yourself out. What am I going to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not here to make everybody account for their past, okay? That's not my job. That's between you and God, okay?
100%. But if she wasn't your friend, if she was just some rando on the internet with a big platform, you would go ham.
Well, no. She also has a very attractive sister. But if that wasn't the case either, if all those things were removed, then no, that's still not the case. When I'm talking to people, okay, my goal is always progress, okay? I'm moving forward, always moving forward. I'm not trying to suck somebody back into like the mistakes of their past and do anything crazy about trying to get them to reconcile for shit that they don't. That's not where my mind is.
I got you. So when we were supposed to have a debate on that, her and I, and of course I was pulling I was pulling Sam Cedar.
Yeah, I remember, but I didn't know enough about her because she's not dumb. For whatever you'll say about Lauren, she's not an idiot. Okay.
No, she's not.
So yeah, so I'm not about to sit there and jump in with you guys, okay? I'm not gonna throw my lot in that boat just for her to shoot a flare at it and burn us down together, okay? I'm gonna watch
You should
from
calm
her.
down on the boat analogies when you're talking about.
I'm gonna watch from afar and let you guys have that fight because I just didn't know enough. I wasn't prepared. If I was gonna argue with her about her past, I'd be like, hey, I watched 6 videos about your bullshit. Let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, but she ducked him. She ducked him.
Oh.
Well, she was gonna have a debate with me. I told this nigga Rose West like, yo, we're gonna get her, right, because he just wanted to have this debate for a long time, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna tell her I can't do it, or no, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start it, and then you'll just replace like instantly, right?
Ooh,
hit the whole, Rose wrist, what a nightmare, But then she was like, we kind of thought like optically it might look a little gross if we just ambush her in that way. So then I told her, like, hey, I can't do it, but Rose Wrist is here and he's available and he's willing to have a conversation. She's like, no, thank you, I just won't have it.
Wow, it sounds like she's dodging because she knows she's wrong.
She did dodge.
True.
But Destiny, you can leverage your relationship and get her to go ahead and do this thing. So that way you're not responsible for actually correcting her on her absolute, destruction that she's caused. Instead, you could actually, just be part of the solution.
Okay, let's say that I do this. What would tell me the positive potential outcome? What is the positive? She walks it back. What do I accomplish from that?
Well, let's see. So Lauren Southern has a humongous audience. And so she perpetuated some of these ideas. We're starting to see these ideas have actual real world ramifications. Buffalo, New York. Okay.
But now it's out of her hands. It's out of control.
It's not completely out of her hand. No. It's not completely out of her hand. People still look up to her and trust her opinion. She's the one that helped really perpetuate this idea.
I don't think anyone cares. No, I'm not trying to shit on her, but I don't think anybody cares at this point, okay? I think now they look to Tucker Carlson. Nobody that's killing people over great replacement shit is doing it because of Lauren Southern. They're doing it because Tucker Carlson said it.
I disagree with that.
I know for a fact. I was friends with the Buffalo shooter. I griefed his base in Rust like 7 times, okay? That's why he went to that grocery store. 100%.
Yeah. Hey, while we're talking about this benign neglect thing that I mentioned earlier,
go ahead.
What do you think? What if Biden, immediately after the Buffalo, New York shooting, decided to go ahead and invite BTS to the White House like 2 weeks afterwards in order to discuss anti-Asian violence, like directly after the Buffalo shooting? Does that seem a little bit ridiculous?
I don't know. It seems okay. Is that bad?
Why would it be okay in like literally the face of an absolute anti-black tragedy to bring Asians on to talk about anti-Asian violence?
I don't know, damn, because a lot of Asians are apparently getting fucked up in the United States.
But they're not. That whole Stop Asian Hate movement, it was ridiculous.
Wait, is it not the case? I thought, hold on, and I fully admit, I might be a victim of the media, because I haven't researched this. I'm only going by like headlines and shit I've seen. My understanding is that hate crimes against Asians has actually risen quite dramatically over the past few years. Is that not true?
Yes, it's true. And while it's risen for Asians, black people still get more hate crimes against them at a 10-to-1 ratio. For every one, I'm saying this succinctly, for every one anti-Asian attack, there are 10 anti-black attacks. Do you think it's fair to say that something is normalizing of anti-black
Wait, hold on.
hate?
Oh my God, I could be so, dude, I'm learning. I'm trying to learn right now, okay? I'm learning. Is there really that much like anti-black hate crimes happening in the United States?
Black race is the largest determining factor for whether or not someone receives for the type of hate crime that someone receives.
Well, no shit. I mean, how many other? Race is going to be the biggest one. You can have one based on religion. You can have them whatever, so on and so forth. But yes, race is the largest category, and black is the largest category of recipients. Is this before or after all the Jussie Smollett's? I'm just kidding.
It's both before and after. We saw an increase in in hate crimes against Asian. They rose from like 2% of the total recipients of hate crimes to 4%. From 2 to 4, while you can say, yeah, that's a 100% increase. Sure. Meanwhile, black people were literally 45 to 50%. No, I think it was 45%. 45% of all the hate crimes received. 45%. Do you think that it's fair to say that something is normalizing of the hate crimes against black people when, because it rose from 2 to 4%, we're now creating anti-Asian hate crime bills?
Well, isn't it already isn't hate crimes already a thing that's not good, and that's why it's called a hate crime?
Sure, but then the thing is that we're supposed to be looking for specific legislation aimed at protecting and decrying anti-black things, the same way we did for Asians. And we've been asking for that for a long time, and they refuse. They only will do things. Biden's first day in office, after giving his speech saying the black community had my back and we're going to have yours, the very first day in office, what he does is he signs LGBTQ executive orders. Now, you can say, well, that's not necessarily bad. But the problem is, once you understand benign neglect, where they're saying we're going to focus on Native Americans, Puerto Rican, Mexican Americans, and so on and so forth, while denying black people, like it starts to make a lot more sense. Like, oh, that's why they're always doing these things. That's why these comparisons are necessary. Benign neglect.
Okay, I don't know what you're asking. I'll agree with you that like they should do things about like anti-black hate crimes, like of course.
Especially, and would you agree with me that it normalizes anti-black hate crimes when you focus on anti-Asian hate crimes, even though Asians are the minority recipient of hate crimes?
Yeah, I guess maybe I don't know if that's, I mean, I would have to see how it plays out electorally, but I mean, bringing BTS is like a popular thing and people see it and Asian Americans feel good, like it's probably okay, but.
Sure, it's okay, but again, it's normalizing.
You're mind fucking me, okay? If there's a rise in hate crimes against Asian people and he brings BTS to the White House, I don't think it's a bad deal. If you're gonna say, well, there's more fucking black people, blah blah blah, I don't care. Like, yeah, we should focus on black shit too, but I don't think I would like take away from like bringing BTS to bring awareness about like I think I would just focus on like, okay, well, we need to do something more about anti-black hate crime as well, right? Now, if you want to say I'm upset because it feels like they're still not doing enough about it, sure, that's fair.
Okay, so this is where the problem comes in. It's not just that these things are viewed independently. You have to look at these things in response. When the government, when there's a large-scale anti-black, freaking racist shooting, right, in Buffalo, New York, the country is looking towards the president to sit here and respond to this situation, to see how the government addresses it. If their way of addressing it is to start focusing on anti-Asian like hate crimes.
Sure, I get what I don't know what
that's problematic. Can you not understand why that would be obviously problematic?
What was the bill that the Democrats passed about Asian?
Okay, just to be sure, hold on, answer that question. Do you not understand why that would be obviously problematic?
I don't know, because I thought that what the Buffalo shooter did, I thought all that shit was illegal. I thought it was not okay already. But
sure, and so are all of the hate crimes. But why did you bring BTS to the White House? Because you're trying to signal that you're showing solidarity with the Asian American community, and you're also trying to show like, hey,
but like maybe this might have been planned like months in advance. I don't know.
Okay, have they since done anything like that for black people? No.
I don't know. Who was the last fucking basketball player or whatever that they brought to the White House? I have no fucking idea. I don't know who goes to the White House. I don't have the fucking logs in front of me.
Okay, so I get it. You don't have the logs. I'm saying when there is a recent large-scale event like the Buffalo shooting, to respond to that, like you can easily move that schedule around. You don't sit here and respond by saying I'm going to invite BTS
Isn't BTS
to the White
literally
House.
Like the largest fucking group of all time in the history of the United States? Like,
yes, and so then that means now that they're going to shift the focus away from this they're shifting the focus away from the anti-black hate crime towards Asians. Okay, that's why it's a problem.
What do you think it was an okay signal when Biden literally said the next Supreme Court justice is going to be black?
So here's the thing. I don't necessarily care about that. Like, I mean, yeah. I got you. This is what you liberals always do. No one cares about these symbolic gestures.
It's not
all the time. Yes. What? All the time. You're actually speaking to somebody who can actually push back against your retardation. All the time. What the Democrats do is they give us all this symbolic nonsense while actually not giving us any of the tangibles that we actually asked for. So yes, you can say, well, yeah, we made the first president be a black man. Well, we got a chief of staff be black. All of these things don't actually give us the tangibles. The wealth gap still continues whether or not we put those people in office or not. That doesn't actually address the tangibles that black people are asking for. Give us economic justice. Actually offset all of the previous systemic oppression that is still having impacts today. Do those things. That's what we're asking for. No one cares about the
I don't
Nancy
think
Pelosi
BTS
putting
going
on
to the
black,
White
yellow,
House.
and red and kneeling and saying we stand in solidarity with the black community. No one wants a freaking street named after them. No one cares about all this symbolic retardation. Give us stuff that actually matters.
I don't know if BTS going to the White House is improving the economic opportunities or anything of any Asian Americans, okay? And I don't know if Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, LeBron James or somebody going to the fucking White House is going to help black people either. I don't know. What do you want? Just tell me what you want, okay? Link me another GoFundMe, okay? What do I need to do?
You didn't donate to the first one. What I want is actually for us to make sure, I'm sorry, you didn't donate to the PayPal. Anyway, what I want is for them to actually start addressing the issues as they happen. There is a concerted effort anytime something happens to black people to start shifting the narrative to everything else, where they start trying to lump us in with, people of color, right? As opposed to actually focusing on specified black violence, economic violence, political violence. That's what's happening to black people. And every time when something happens, we decide, well, let's start, for example, after the Buffalo thing, they shifted the entire conversation to immigration. Nigga literally drove, I don't know how many freaking miles, I think it was like 200 miles, all these hours, specifically to arrive at a black community so he could shoot black people. Pointed his gun at white folks and said, oops, my bad, and then went on to go massacre niggas. And then in response to that, where he's literally trying to massacre niggas, we say, we need to talk about immigration. Let's talk about anti-Asian hate, which was already, and you probably are misinformed about this. Do you not remember, like, when the anti-Asian hate movement was happening, Stop Anti-Asian Hate movement was happening, the whole time the media kept using images to represent as if black people were the ones doing this, when all of it was happening by white people. But they were intentionally selecting specifically black attacks and then saying, see, there's a problem with blacks and Asians, and there's tension rising between the two of them, which the media stoked. They were white people. White people were doing this. White people are the largest perpetrators of hate crime, yet they are painting it as a black issue. Yet when black people are the recipients of hate crimes, we refuse to actually address it, and instead we sit there and start focusing on, well, let's look at freaking, who the freak? Let's talk about Mexicans, let's talk about Native Americans, let's talk about Indians. Literally anything else. That's the problem. Do you think that's a fair complaint, if that's actually happening?
Yeah, if that's happening, that'd be a fair complaint, for sure. Faux cheesy.
Okay. All right, so that's actually happening, and you should go ahead and do some research, and you can go ahead and prove that I'm right. Destiny, you have had a tendency in previous debates where somebody said a whole bunch of nonsense, and you go ahead and do your research, or people start emailing you to correct it, and then you go back and say, hey, you're wrong about this, you're wrong about that, you're wrong about this, so on and so forth. I encourage you to do the same thing now. Go ahead and do your research, and then come back to the conclusion, and then you can come back and say, hey, you were right about this, you were right about that, you were right about everything.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else, or?
Now, there's one more thing that you can do for me.
What do you need, babe?
All right, I got a song.
Okay. And
you can go ahead and play it on your stream.
Yeah, link me.
And I think that'll be a small form of reparations, but you still need to do more.
Okay, link me. I'm ready.
All right. You tell me this song isn't pretty ridiculous. I'm a beast musician.
I know you're a beast.
I should start playing the piano when you and I have conversations.
Yeah, you should.
Because I'm actually better at it.
If only there was... I know. Yep. Okay, let me listen. Hold on. Here we go.
All right.
68... 1 minute and 28 seconds?
Yeah, it's for a video game.
Okay, XXS Tentacion. All right, here we go. Let's see. Okay, nice, cute. What's the theme of the game?
It's kind of amazing. You know me, but race was always going to be a factor. You ever heard of a game called Phoenix Wright?
Is that the attorney game?
Yes. So there's a guy, it's an independent programmer, and he's making, or independent game developer, and he's making a game that's like Phoenix Wright, but it's actually specifically focused on civil rights issues. So he commissioned me to make these songs, basically like for the soundtrack, right? And so my research for that was to go and listen to Shaft and, all the, blaxploitation music, and then like use that as inspiration to kind of create these songs. And so the soundtrack is just going to be all this very black, soulful, 60s style music, slightly modernized.
Doesn't that sound like a really shitty premise for a game?
No. Why would that be bad? Break it down.
Well, if it's about black people, isn't the verdict just going to be guilty on everyone?
I hate you so much, Destiny. I'm leaving.
I love you, dude, okay?